President-elect announces his picks. What you should know about the people who will help him lead the country. Pentagon plans. We're there to tell you Donald Trump's focus on the U.S. military. Vatican celebration. 17 men prepare to become princes of the church. And a priest and an imam together. It's not the start of a joke, but a new commercial, just in time for Christmas. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, November 18th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President-elect Donald Trump is changing the face of government, announcing who will join his cabinet. Jason Calvi is here to tell us who's still under consideration and how they're making peace with the president-elect. And Wyatt Goolsbee is reporting from the Pentagon with Trump's vision for the U.S. military. First, Trump's top team begins to take shape. He's made 3 offers, among them a retired Army general, the first senator to endorse Trump, and a conservative Republican congressman from Kansas. All 3 are fierce critics of President Barack Obama's handling of terrorism and international relations.
We must regain our ability to truly crush our enemies.
Retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn will be President-elect Donald Trump's national security advisor. Flynn is described as having been pushed out as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency under President Obama in 2014. Outgoing CIA Director James Clapper, who announced yesterday he's retiring at the end of Obama's term, had a hand in Flynn's ouster.
Wow!
Now Flynn's loyalty to Trump is paying off.
We feel very confident that Senator Sessions has the background and the support to receive confirmation.
Strong words of support today for Alabama Republican Senator Jeff Sessions, who Trump is naming as Attorney General. Sessions was not confirmed as a federal judge during the Reagan administration after critics accused him of making racist remarks. Under Trump, Sessions is expected to take a tough stand against illegal immigration, one of the big issues Trump campaigned on. And Mike Pompeo is being tapped to run the CIA. The Kansas Republican strongly criticized President Obama's nuclear deal with Iran, most recently tweeting that he looks forward to rolling back this disastrous deal with the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. Trump's military transition team is setting up shop at the Pentagon. The Defense Department confirms the landing teams, as it's called, are getting its first briefing this afternoon. Wyatt Goolsbee is covering that story tonight from the Pentagon. Wyatt.
Lauren, Pentagon Press Secretary Peter Cook says they are doing everything they can to make sure that this transition is a seamless one on their end. Cook says the Defense Department first heard from Trump's team Thursday. Reports indicate Trump staffers are also in touch this week with the state and justice departments. First order of business, security clearances. Defense is a top issue for this administration. Trump has been critical of President Obama's strategy to defeat ISIS and reduction of military personnel. Trump said on day one he would meet with his top military advisors and come up with a plan within 30 days to defeat ISIS. The president-elect is the first in history to have no government or military experience. Lauren?
Wyatt, we were talking about Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor before he's been named. How do you hear that he is going to shape Trump's policy in fighting ISIS?
Well, Lauren, both Trump and Flynn both have this fundamental concept, and they agree that the United States is at war with radical Islamic terrorists. That's the term they both use, and they both feel so strongly about this that it's why Trump said he's willing to work with so many other countries, whether it's NATO nations or even potentially Russia, all with that same goal to defeat ISIS.
All right, Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the Pentagon. Thank you. And more decisions are expected soon. Trump will head to his golf course in New Jersey this weekend to meet with his vociferous critic, former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney. Trump has reached out to other critics, among them Texas Senator Ted Cruz and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley. Jason Calvi caught up with both of them today here in Washington. Jason.
Lauren, there's speculation that Haley and Cruz are being considered for the Trump administration. Haley as a possible Secretary of State, Senator Cruz as a possible Supreme Court justice, but today both said very little.
She used to be a vocal Trump critic, but now South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley could be joining his cabinet.
Governor, how was the meeting with President-elect?
Some are speculating Texas Senator Ted Cruz is being considered for the Supreme Court. Cruz would only say this.
I look forward to working hard to help ensure that a strong conservative constitutionalist is confirmed to the Supreme Court, and that across the board we continue to deliver on the promises we made to the voters throughout this election.
South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham once compared the choice between Trump and Cruz to being shot or poisoned. Now he says Cruz would be a good Supreme Court pick.
Ted Cruz is a constitutional conservative, very, very smart, in the mold of Scalia. The people on the list that I've seen, potential picks, I could support them all. I just suggested that if you're looking for a Scalia-type figure, somebody to replace Judge Scalia and sort of in their image judicially, Ted Cruz would fit the bill.
Conservative and libertarian lawyers turned out in big numbers in D.C. to hear Cruz and Haley speak. And now nasty barbs on the campaign trail seem to be water under the bridge.
Well, I won't pretend to have always been President-elect's biggest cheerleader. I did vote for him, and I was absolutely thrilled to see him win.
Before the election, Donald Trump had put together a list of 21 possible Supreme Court justices. He said he consulted with two conservative groups here in Washington, the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. The list of 21 included one senator, not Ted Cruz, but Utah's Mike Lee. Lauren?
It seems very odd to me to be talking about Ted Cruz for the Supreme Court, especially after their rocky relationship and calling each other's names. Now, if he is appointed, long shot, what do you think the chances are he'd get voted in by his fellow senators?
Well, to have Lindsey Graham, one of his fiercest opponents at the Capitol, Republican opponents at the Capitol, saying he'd be a good pick, that speaks volumes today. But it is important to keep in mind that Trump has promised to pick somebody from the list of 21. His campaign reiterated that promise today, this week actually, and also the Federalist Society met with Trump this week and said again that it looks like that Trump will be picking somebody on that list of 21, which Cruz is not on that list. But I know many Republicans here would probably be very happy to have Cruz off of the Senate since he's caused so many headaches for Republican leaders here.
All right, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill, thank you so much. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan goes into the weekend on a high note. A new Gallup poll shows his favorable rating at its highest level since he took over as Speaker last year. 48%, or nearly half of all Americans, think positively of Ryan. And as Trump continues to build his administration, relations with Capitol Hill will be critical. Joining us now is Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Lauren.
Donald Trump has been reaching out this week. The big story has been the transition.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that he is trying here to unify both sides of the party. We heard that Mitt Romney is going to be meeting with him, one of his biggest critics, Ted Cruz, Nikki Haley. Is this a sign of unity in the party, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, he has appointed loyalists for his first nominees. That makes sense. That's traditional. But he's not holding grudges against these other. I mean, it's amazing that he's meeting with Mitt Romney. I mean, it's going to be an awkward meeting. There are rumors that he could be Secretary of State. I'm not buying into that just yet, but clearly I think it is good for Trump to try to unify the party. Remember, Republicans traditionally, they get behind their nominee. They didn't get behind Trump, but now that he's won, it seems like they are.
It does seem that way. You're right, including Ted Cruz, including Paul Ryan, including Nikki Haley. The list goes on and on. How easy do you think this confirmation process is going to be for some of these appointees? Now, General Flynn, who's going to be Trump's national security advisor, doesn't need that approval, but you know, quick approval is really important, isn't it?
It's important, and it's also, remember, the Democrats changed the rules in the Senate. So for most nominees, not Supreme Court, you just need a majority. So Jeff Sessions, certainly he said there's controversy there of his past comments, but remember, he's a member of the Senate club. I think he's going to be confirmed, and if the Republicans unite behind him, which I honestly expect, he's definitely going to get to 51 that he needs. And I think Pompeo also likely to get cleared.
One of the things that really has dogged us, me, you, other journalists during this campaign has been fake news. We haven't really talked about it a lot on this show, but you know, it really impacted, I think, the election, especially the animosity toward Donald Trump. Do you agree with that? Do you think that, you know, this is the reason some people are now having this panic attack that Donald Trump is president because of this fake news?
Well, I mean, some of it is I think, honestly, just based on his statements and that he did incite the base and they like him, but he also, independents and Democrats certainly were turned off by him. However, do I think that fake news played a role? Yes, because we've all seen on our feeds that somebody would actually believe in this fake news. Now, it's a First Amendment issue, too. What are you going to censor that? It's a very difficult issue for social media people or outlets like Facebook to handle, but it's not going away.
Did your journalists fall prey to any of this?
You know, we didn't, but we've also, because we have an email chain where an email was sent around, well, wait a minute, is that right? And we stopped it. So, you know, somebody was fooled, but we didn't go to publication.
Right, and a lot of people did. Everybody was fooled by this fake news.
Yes, no, it looks real. And sometimes, you know, we've had a cycle that is so unpredictable, anything can happen. So I think it's going to bedevil journalists going forward, too.
I do, too. Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill, thank you so much for joining us. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The United Nations drops its emergency declaration for Zika. It says the virus is here to stay. It's shifting now to a long-term financial approach. The mosquito-borne virus can lead to severe birth defects. A mother in Minnesota is suing her child for transitioning from a male to female without her permission. The woman is also suing her child's doctors, health officials, and school officials. She says her 17-year-old was treated without her consent. Her child did obtain a letter of emancipation from a lawyer, but it wasn't approved by a court. And a Catholic group calls for D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to veto the so-called Death with Dignity Act. The legislation passed earlier this week, and it would legalize assisted suicide in Washington, D.C. The D.C. Catholic Conference released this statement saying, in part, the conference, working with the broad-based coalition No DC Suicide, continues to press Mayor Bowser to veto this extreme and reckless legislation. There is still time, the statement says, for Catholics to add their voices to the loud call for a veto. The Catholic Church teaches assisted suicide violates the sacred value of human life. And a new poll by the Susan B. Anthony list finds a majority of voters support legislation to limit abortions after 5 months, a point which an unborn child feels pain. The poll finds 64% of voters favor the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Act. But the support was especially high among millennials, 78%, women, 67%, African Americans, 70%, Hispanics, 57%. President-elect Trump has pledged to sign that legislation into law. He also promised to defund Planned Parenthood. Coming up, what the International Catholic Migration Commission is doing about the refugee crisis around the world. Plus, Cardinal-elect Joseph Tobin shares his mother's story, what she said about Pope Francis before he became head of the church. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. A new clinic opens on the Jordan-Syria border to provide humanitarian assistance to refugees. The camp is home to nearly 80,000 people. They have no food or medicine except for a daily water truck. Monsignor Robert Vitillo, the Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission, joins us from Rome. Monsignor, please put this in context for us. How historic is this current migration of refugees?
Right now, we have about 65 million forcibly displaced people in the world. 25 million of those are refugees. 40 million are displaced people within their own countries. That number is the largest we have seen since the Second World War.
And it extends beyond Europe and the Middle East, is that right?
Oh, yes, it extends far beyond Europe and the Middle East. I'll give you an example. We have had, during the past couple of years, about 1.5 million refugees and forced migrants arriving in Europe. We just had a board meeting about the International Catholic Migration Commission here this week in Rome, and the bishop from Thailand pointed out to us that they have 4 million refugees in their country, and certainly Thailand is a much smaller country than the whole of Europe. We also have refugees, many refugees in Africa, and then we also have all over Asia, and especially we still have many Afghan refugees who are pouring into Pakistan and other countries. We also have the Muslim, the Rohingya refugees in Malaysia. So there are millions and millions of refugees all over the world, far more than we see in Europe.
How is your mission, your organization's mission, different than other relief organizations?
Our organization was created by Pope Pius XII in 1951, so right after the Second World War. And he gave us the mandate to form a network of all of the bishops' conferences in the world, as well as religious orders and other Catholic organizations that serve refugees and migrants. Certainly that mandate is still a very valid and important one, maybe even more urgent than it was when we were created. What's different about us is that our exclusive mandate is to work on refugee and migration issues, whereas a number of the other Catholic organizations, including the Worldwide Caritas Confederation, work on many different humanitarian crises, but they're not exclusively focused on refugees and migrants.
So do you have people on the ground in all of these different countries, or is this a broader policy-making body?
Well, first of all, we're a global organization, and so much of the work done with refugees and migrants is through our member organizations, the bishops' conferences of the world. But we also are operational in certain places, and so we have about 400 people on the ground that are involved with the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, to process those people who are applying for status as refugees. And also then we work very closely, especially with the U.S. government, to process all of the applications for resettlement in the United States. So we do have about 400 people who are on the ground in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and especially now in the Middle East.
Okay, Monsignor Robert Vitillo, the Secretary General of the International Catholic Migration Commission. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Vatican prepares for tomorrow's celebration when 17 men, some from far-flung corners of the globe, become cardinals. Tailors put the final touch on garments for the cardinals-elect. The ceremony, called a consistory, will take place at the Vatican. Pope Francis will place a red biretta or hat on each man's head. It symbolizes the man's readiness to act, even to the point of spilling their blood for the Christian faith. After tomorrow, there will be 228 cardinals, including 120 under the age of 80 and able to vote for a new pope. 49% of the College of Cardinals is from Europe, 12% from North America, 12% from South America, and the rest are spread across the rest of the world. One of the soon-to-be cardinals says his mom is a longtime fan of the Pope. Archbishop Joseph Tobin recalls telling then Cardinal Bergoglio why.
But I have to say, honestly, you were my mother's candidate. And he looked at me quite surprised. He said, how does your mother know me? I said, well, she read in the newspaper that you pick up after yourself, that you cook your own food and you wash your clothes. And I said, frankly, she's had it up to here with princes of the church.
Sounds spoken like a true mother. The cardinal-elect says his mother is in Rome for the ceremony tomorrow. He hopes he can introduce her to Pope Francis. It's not something you see often, a priest and an imam together in a commercial. The ad is for Amazon's Prime service. It shows this priest and imam talking about their knee pain and then using Prime to send each other knee braces as gifts. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos tweeted this video, adding he is very proud of his ad team. Up next, the impact a Minnesota police officer is having on race relations in the U.S. Pope Francis is getting ready to close the Holy Door at St. Peter's. We'll look back at some of the biggest moments of the Jubilee Year of Mercy. November is Black Catholic History Month. Today we remember Father Augustus Tolton, the first Black Catholic priest in the U.S. He was born a slave and later became a priest in 1886. The Vatican is now considering his cause for sainthood. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Minnesota has been at the center of a growing amount of racial tension. This week, manslaughter charges were filed against this Minnesota police officer, Jeronimo Yanez. He shot and killed Philando Castile during a traffic stop in July. Now, Castile's girlfriend streamed these shootings, the immediate aftermath, on Facebook. The shooting sparked protests and highlighted ongoing racial tensions between the police and the Black community. Joining us is Rachel Paulos, a former U.S. attorney in Minnesota and now in private practice. Thank you for coming to EWTN. Tensions between police and minority communities have exploded in this country and have been an issue for a very long time. Tell me about the current situation in St. Paul. That's where you that's where you live?
Minneapolis, St. Paul
right.
Continues to be the source of ongoing tensions, and certainly the election aftermath and the organized protests have continued since then. There is continuing tension between minority communities and the police, but I do think that the announcement this week of charges against Officer Yanez will go a long way towards restoring some confidence.
But police officers are the ones who put themselves on the line to protect citizens. We've seen horrendous attacks on police officers. And do you think that these charges against Officer Yanez are going to have a more negative impact on police?
I hope not. Most police officers do their jobs with honor and integrity. I think it's important, Lauren, in this case to understand that this situation was quite unique. We're not dealing here with a convicted felon actively shooting at police, running from the scene of a crime. We're dealing with a peaceful, law-abiding citizen who respectfully complied with a police officer's request during a routine traffic stop, even informed the police officer that he was complying as he obeyed the officer's instructions, and was strapped in his seatbelt with his girlfriend beside him and a 4-year-old toddler in the back seat, and was shot 7 times in the chest.
So this is a case in which, obviously they found for this man. Do you think that other cities will look at how St. Paul has handled this case and the reviewing of the evidence, and it will set a precedent, possibly?
I think the unique use of an outside prosecutor in this case, including an assistant U.S. attorney, as well as a highly respected civil rights leader and lawyer, Don Lewis, gave the community confidence that outsiders who do not have a hand-in-glove relationship with the local police looked at the evidence and attempted to make an impartial decision. Now, of course, Officer Yanez is innocent until proven guilty, but these charges send a serious message. It's the first time in modern history that in Minnesota, a police officer has been charged in a civilian-related death.
Would you say across the country that it's the norm, or it is not the norm that police officers are charged?
It is the rare exception where officers are charged in civilian-related deaths. So this case, for many reasons, is outside the spectrum of what we typically see.
And do you expect, Rachel, to see people applauding this in your community, or how do you expect this to play out on the spectrum of tension?
The community has already responded to this positively. The victim's family has endorsed the process here of using outsiders to review the evidence. They have applauded the charges. The civil rights leaders who were involved, including an organized protest, said this gives the community comfort that justice may be done. The media has remarked on how this is really an unprecedented sort of prosecution.
Thank you so much, Rachel Paulos, a former U.S. attorney in Minnesota.
Thank you.
For the EWTN News Nightly team, that does it for us for this week. I'm Lauren Ashburn. We're going to leave you tonight with a look back at key moments from the Jubilee Year of Mercy. Good night, and God bless.